If you think it's impressive to watch a rocket take off for Mars for a year and a half, you should see what happens behind the scenes here at AfterBuzz. It's crazy. And what's really crazy is that we're already at the end of our 2-episode binge of Hulu's The First. We're going to cover episodes 5, 6, 7, and 8 and give you our thoughts and what's going to happen in another season. All that coming up now on the first after show.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
You know, every once in a while, you get the opportunity to play a little Lou Reed in form of Velvet Underground, and it's hard to turn away from the skit. It actually fits appropriately here on what is already our finale. We've done 2 episodes now, and we are going to cover episodes 5 through 8 of The First on Hulu. And if you've watched already, then you'll remember that this song comes up. And if you haven't watched already, well, then why are you watching our after show? Go ahead, watch the show, come back. We'll be here. We'll just wait. I'm Christian Bladt, joined once again by Bianca Haase.
Hey, everybody.
Did I get it right this time?
It was 100% correct.
All right. I should have just been like playing it cool. Like, oh yeah, of course I have it right.
I'll say what he calls me.
Trace. No, Angele Taylor. Hello, welcome.
Hey.
So, we talked a lot, and we're going to have to, we have to move pretty quickly through the episodes, but I want to kind of take a minute for each of you. We talked a lot about how the first 4 episodes, it's very slow, very deliberate, and obviously a lot of like, oh, I want more to happen. Well, now you've seen everything that happened.
Yes.
And Angele, I'll ask you first. Mm-hmm. How did you feel about these 8 episodes on the whole?
I was very grateful for these last 5 through 8 episodes because they really unfolded a lot for me and confirmed a lot, and I got to see the characters at different levels emotionally.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, when we talk about episode 5, it answers, I think, a lot of questions that sort of creep into your mind as you watch the first 4 episodes.
That was the most loaded episode.
Yeah. Bianca, what did you think?
I really enjoyed these last few episodes. I am so glad they finally went to space. Thank goodness.
I actually was wondering, as these episodes were unfolding, I'm like, man, the episode's going to end. They're going to be on the launch pad, and we're not even going to know if they don't blow up.
Off.
Yeah, no, we finally had that need satisfied.
I swear I didn't think they were going to space. I was just like, they're like, and we'll see you in space next year.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh, this is cool. Like at like the half-hour point, it's like, well, we still have a lot of time left, and we actually see them doing space things. I knew we weren't getting to Mars.
That would be a great segue into season 2, though.
Yeah, well, and we will certainly talk about season 2. So, I found that it's sort of the similar kind of pace, very character development heavy, and I think that these are very well-rounded characters, and we got to know them even more throughout the course of these episodes. So let's just dive right in, and we already alluded to how episode 5, what happened was that we got basically so much backstory on Tom's wife, Denise's mother, and just so many other things. And we already sort of touched on it, but Angele, you go first. Mm-hmm. Tell us about what your thoughts were as you kind of watched, had all these questions answered.
So it really showed the transition of Diane, the mother, and how she went from extremely happy, her family all together, to we saw her spiraling down, beat by beat, how she becomes addicted to alcohol and then to, painkillers or some type of medication, and later her own suicide. So, I mean, yeah, that was such a heavy, like everything all wrapped up in a pretty bow in episode 5.
Right, and as is often the case in real life, it's not like the spiral starts and it's just immediately all the way down. You definitely see things pick back up. They're all very excited when they get the new house. She's got the tattoo parlor, so you definitely see ups and downs. You see it as more of a roller coaster there. And Bianca, what did you think as you sort of saw the backstory on his wife? And how that actually impacts the question that was kind of burning from episode 1. But why did he get kicked off the mission?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we kind of talked about in the last after show, where it's about how these imperfect people having to do this perfect, impossible task. And it really finally, like we have already attested to, answered so many questions that I don't know. It was kind of a little blame game in a way. I don't know if you guys felt that way. I felt the entire episode I was trying to figure out who was responsible for their downfall as a family, and it fell on everybody's shoulders.
Yeah, I think it's obviously Denise as a child, not really that much, but I'd say both parents very much responsible. And then, of course, as she gets older, she starts to have her problems as well. So I think that really you just sort of get to see, just the family, you sort of unraveling. You see just all the excitement. But even when because he's home so infrequently, and just when they're dating, you see her frustration, when they're talking. I believe that there are several scenes that take place in a bathtub.
Yes.
And I think that's one of them.
So weird.
Yeah.
It's like,
but
why?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, what I thought was so interesting about this episode that, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they do in any of the other episodes, is whenever it's a flashback, everything in the surrounding environment is black.
Yeah,
Which
it's sort
is,
of
yeah.
and
muted. It's just so
it's sort of
ominous.
I think a lot of it, and obviously, Denise isn't privy to a lot of these things, but maybe there's stories she heard, and a lot of it is sort of from her memory. And I think the way that you remember things is you're not going to remember the little details, things that are on the bookshelf and, all that. You kind of remember like, oh, these are the main things that happened. And one of the thoughts that I had was something we talked about on our last show, which was sort of the quarters and sort of repairing the phone. And in the course of this episode, you sort of see the putting the phone back together is sort of collecting these memories and try to repair the phones, and you're sort of piecing together this is what came before. And I think that continues, and we'll talk about it when we get to episode 8, that the metaphor, which we talked a lot about last week, didn't we, Bianca? The metaphor really, I think it just sort of reflects like, yeah, we're sort of getting the important parts that we need to understand this story. I think that was the role that had.
Yeah, I thought just from a background perspective too, Bo Willimon is a playwright. That's his first career. It felt so much like watching a play, didn't it?
Yeah,
I liked it. I thought it was a really interesting storytelling tactic.
Yeah, and I thought it was great to, get to see all those things, to really get to see the different parts of the family, and just sort of the back and forth between Tom and Diane, when he is home and he's saying, Denise, don't color on the walls. And it's like, just let her color on the walls. Yeah. And, that's obviously more of a metaphor in and of itself for the bigger problems they had. But then it's just so sad. So she's like, well, if they're going to fight about it, I'm just going to Windex the wall and clean off my drawings, So
there was a lot of that where you could feel her role. She almost had to parent their relationship. She cleaned up a lot after them, like with the duct tape and cleaning the wall.
Oh yeah, and then when they tried to have that intimate moment for their anniversary, she's like cutting her dad out of the tape of shame.
The tape of shame,
the tape of humiliation. Like, hold on, we were about to get it on, and it went all bad.
And she just wanted some champagne, and it's like, come on, we know that's not a good idea. Yeah, it's like, yeah, we get it, but look what happens when you have a sip of champagne. So. I thought it was all it was all sort of well explained, and we sort of see that obviously all these problems. Yeah, it wasn't a good time for him to go to Mars.
In that scene, though, didn't you get the feeling they were already drunk? Didn't they seem like they were already pretty lit? Like
when she's getting taped, when he's getting taped in the chair,
when she's doing the taping, anyone sober would not be. Like,
that's true. I didn't really think of it that way. I thought that they were just excited.
So
but
weird.
Now that you say it, they were sort of acting like they'd already had something to drink.
That was not a sober situation.
But they must not have been. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so upset because it's like, no, you already had enough.
Weird.
Look, I think
the choice they made.
We should just say that there are some passionate people. I mean, in all the flashbacks,
very hippie-ish.
There's a lot.
I was getting hippie vibes from her.
There's a lot. Like we said, there's a lot in the bathtub. They're just they're very into each other.
Yeah, which I mean, it's all very sweet to see, and you sort of see, the seeing Denise when she's little. That's all stuff that connects with me because I have little kids, and you sort of you feel bad for times that you can see a kid feel bad, and you're like, oh yeah, she really senses what's going on, and in a lot of ways, like you said, she is definitely the adult in the situation. So we get all of that, and it's sort of. framed, no pun intended, by her doing the portrait as she went along. And it's this sort of very interesting portrait of her mother that has the two levels, sort of the top of the face, which is all the happy memories, and then the bottom is the, get out of the water, what are you doing, And then she just gets so angry, she just blacks the whole thing out, which, again, I think a callback to her cleaning off her wall when she's a little kid. But that brings her to the present day when she obviously can't cope with everything that she's trying to process. So she goes to this crazy party, and I'm an old guy. I don't get out much, but do parties like that happen more often than I think they do? Because when I was a kid, parties didn't look like that when I was a kid. But
maybe here in Hollywood, right?
I mean, that's in New Orleans, so maybe.
I think the funny thing about that is when she explains it after the fact, she's like, I don't even know how I got there. I stumbled upon it, but it's really just a big orgy. So I don't know. I don't know. I've never been to a big orgy.
Did you see them having sex on there?
Well, there's the aerial shot of the people on the couches.
That's true. They were doing some things
on each other.
Okay.
And, I mean, everybody was
there's
close.
There's a tank if you want to tie one off and shoot up. It's just like, well, that's nice to have a dedicated area.
That was so randomly placed.
Yeah. So it's like, if there was a description, like if she looked up on Yelp, like, party that I should not be at, this would be the one with 5 stars at the top.
Yeah.
This is the number one. This is not where she should have gone.
Right.
But clearly she knew about it.
It had every element of bad and wrong.
And it doesn't go well for her, obviously, as we see at the end. And I'm not surprised. Obviously, it's sort of a disappointing because you see that she's doing so well. But I think it's all just too much for her. Bianca, is that what you feel like that moment was more about? Less a moment, less the desire of getting high and more like, I just can't feel the way I do right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really contribute too much more to that other than saying 100% I agree. That's definitely
a good contribution.
Yeah.
Do you feel like she's like a social drug user? You know how some people are social drinkers and they get plastered? I feel like every setting where she ODs, she's around people. She's around...
I don't think that's what it is.
She's in a social
She
setting.
does strike me as somebody who would probably get high by herself in her room. But I guess it really depends because, like...
They never show that.
Cocaine is a fairly social drug. It's not necessarily one that you're going to always do by yourself.
Have you seen Scarface?
Well, heroin is a little bit more of a... I'm gonna go in this dark room and lay down for 5 hours. You know, so I think it just sort of depends. I think that we see her in social settings, and you're right. I mean, she could very well have been a social drug user, but I think when you get to the point that you're using that much, I don't think you're gonna wait like, well, nobody's over. I guess I can't get high.
Well, on the last one, she didn't shoot herself up.
No,
but that's pretty common though. I mean, I don't know from experience.
Oh,
but,
okay.
But
all the heroin you did in Arizona.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not here to judge, but
It's not
kids,
her,
don't do
it's
drugs.
just her friends.
Those weren't friends. Those were complete strangers, though. Like when she does the heroin in the tank, she doesn't know any of those people.
Actually, I was talking about Bianca.
Well, Bianca know those people.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, I've been that place. That place is good.
You're super trustworthy.
Not me.
Obviously.
It's my friend stuff.
So then that just brings us right into episode 6, where she's in a jail cell. And Angele, were you surprised that she called Laz?
I was very shocked she called Laz,
Right.
but at the same time, this is the lady that shows up at her job unexpectedly. So maybe that was a good decision for Laz. Maybe that cultivated some type of connection, or like, okay, well, you're a mother figure now. Like maybe that did something for her, for Denise.
Right. What did you think when you realized that was who she called, Bianca?
Well, it seemed like a pretty strategic move, I thought. I think it felt, she goes on to explain it to her dad and says that the reason why I called her is because she's here and because I didn't want to mess everything up again. So it felt, Denise is a smart character, and even though she makes dumb choices, I think she goes about them relatively intelligently. So I thought to me, it felt more like, I'm going to call the boss and she's going to take care of this.
Right.
And you
And she
can't
has more
get too
pull, too.
mad about it because you're in front of your boss.
Right. There's the legitimate reason of he's not in town. So, but then there's also, and as she explains to her father, yeah, it's just like she just felt so bad about having messed everything up. That's not the language she used. But we don't need to swear if we don't have to. So
Yeah.
I think that it really was, and it was just sort of just disappointment in herself, maybe even a little embarrassment, just like, I can't call my dad, but I do need help. So, and not the kind of help you necessarily need to be getting, it's just more, she's just like, well, Laz said she would help, and this is a situation where it's going to be better than having to talk to my dad on the drive home.
Also, I mean, how would you guys feel knowing that you're the reason why your dad didn't get to go on the first mission in the first place because of your drug problem?
Right. I mean, I do think it came shortly after her mother dying. I feel like, obviously we don't have the timeline, but I feel like it was within a year, maybe two. You know what I mean? So I think that Tom was already dealing with a lot,
all too
and they were
much.
already concerned. And then when this happened, she was just like, we can't
Right.
send you. And, legitimately, you're like, yeah, of course, there's just too much on his mind. And also, he should try and at least do his best to be a responsible parent. Also in this episode that we sort of have this ongoing interview that Laz is giving. Bianca, what did you think about some of the revelations that we got about her background and how open this, look, for 5 episodes, really, this character is fairly closed off. You don't really get to know much about her, except for just sort of like bullet points that you would put on like a resume or a cover letter. What did you think about getting to know a little bit more about her?
I really enjoyed it. And I think also you learn such a breadth of information about her too. It's not just, her quote about happiness is the death of complacency, or death by complacency.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Which
yeah.
is very introspective and revealing, but you also learn tangible facts about her, like how she got to where she is, and you learn about her family life. And I thought it was really insightful and really well done to kind of explore that with this reporter narrative. I really enjoyed it.
What did you think, Angele?
I think Laz met her match with the reporter. She kept trying to bullshit him, and as my mom would put it, you can't piss on me and tell me it's raining. So I really felt like she kept trying to pull the wool over his eyes, and he's like, no, let's just get back to the basics. I already know why you're setting it up this way. And I really appreciated his forwardness, and, she was able to play with him a little bit, but he only allowed her to play with it so far.
Right, and she gives the very honest answer, and it was clearly something that she dodged early in their interview and had dodged in the past of like, well, no, my sister who's a model gave me, the $200,000 I needed, and I felt bad that I needed it. And I think that sort of helps, when you're getting this kind of, in-depth article written about you, that kind of rapport of like, he's like, well, she's actually being honest with me. And clearly, like, what he writes at least serves the purpose she wanted it to, because even though he is a skeptic and he sees the test not work, he is able to kind of believe, as she encourages him to, like, this is what we're capable of. This is what we could do.
Use your imagination.
Right. It's exactly what she tells him to do. And then I guess the other key thing that happens in episode 6, which is called Collisions, is that Denise moves into the guest house. And that guest house is nicer than any house I've ever lived in.
Yes,
That's just
sir.
a guest house.
Yes,
And she's
sir.
like, if you get hungry, the chef's around from 2 to 10. I'm like,
The
you're paying a chef.
housekeeper will be here.
You're paying a chef for 8 hours of just in case you want anything.
The fridge is fully stocked in
Yeah.
the guest house.
So if Denise looks like she moved out, I'm going to volunteer. I'd like to move into the guest house just for a long weekend.
Oh my gosh, like that is like drug user goals. Like,
I was like, wait, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that we reward people for bad behavior, but
goals.
I sort of touched on it, but Angele, what did you think about Laz's decision to let this reporter see the test And, obviously the first time he just doesn't see any, he just sees how it doesn't work. Sort of being that upfront, letting her people tell him, ultimately that it's like a worse than 50-50 shot, ultimately the 1 in 5 chance. Were you surprised that she was willing to offer that kind of access?
I wasn't surprised. I was glad she put all the cards out on the table because, if this next mission fails, then it's like, what do you have left to hide? There's nothing left to hide. So I feel like honesty was the best strategy in this case because, things could go terribly wrong again.
Yeah, no, definitely. And
I think her biggest fear is to be exposed. And so if she's already putting things down on the table, like, okay, here's how it is, and here are the chances, and it's 42.8, I feel like there's nothing left after that. You can't chew her apart because she already told you up front.
And Bianca, like me, were you surprised that Laz was actually having back problems and it wasn't just the excuse? Because I was like, okay, that's the kind of thing you tell somebody. And like, oh no, she really is having trouble laying down.
They also came on very quickly.
Yeah, well, yes, that's true. It was very sudden.
Just like the reporter accused her of at the beginning, like, oh, your back problems are so sudden. And then
so
at
convenient.
First you think,
and she's like, yes, they are very convenient.
Yeah.
I know, that almost sounds like something that was in the writer's room. Like, boy, these back problems are really convenient. Wait, let's use that. And, sort of tying into her back problem while she is at Tom's house, there's this sort of moment where she can't find her purse, and there's this panic that Denise is in the bathroom with all of her painkillers.
Flips out.
Well, and I think, again, our favorite theme as we talk about the show, that's a metaphor for the constant fear that he's in that she's going to do something like that. Bianca, is that how you sort of interpreted that? It's less about the moment of like, oh, okay, you had the pills, but it's just the realization that like, yeah, I'm kind of like always pounding on that door, making sure you're okay.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think what's interesting though is that despite all of that, he's making a choice to abandon her essentially. So it's interesting that somebody could care so much and be so completely consumed by their concern and then simultaneously be like, but it's Mars, so I'm going to go anyway.
Right. And I mean, later, we'll jump ahead for a second. I mean, later he just talks about like, this is who I am. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And I think that legitimate concern for his daughter, but it's more the guilt of what happened to his mother, the guilt of the fact of how she, as in Denise, responded to it. I think it's a lot of guilt and just not knowing how to handle it. When she's looking at her touchpad screen, all the emails, they have subjects with things like, this is really hard for me. Like you can just tell that even that is difficult. So I think just expressing why he's concerned, but I still really care about you is really difficult for him.
Yeah, it's definitely, he's a pretty selfish character. He really is a selfish character.
Did you see the part where the virtual him called him out? He was like, if I had known that she would be completely okay,
I wouldn't go.
Yeah.
And then the virtual him says what we'd heard the virtual Mateo say.
Truth.
We said, you're not being completely honest with me.
You're not being completely honest.
And that was the end of that episode.
He called
which
him
I believe
bullshit.
was this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, so that kind of brings us right up until that point. And before we move on to episode 7 and 8, Bianca has an important message to share with all of you.
Yes, I do. So, hey, AfterBuzzers, our network produces after shows for nearly all your favorite TV shows. From dramas, reality TV, sci-fi, and more, there is no network that works harder to serve television fans. But we need your help. We're asking that you please subscribe to one or more of our YouTube channels. By subscribing to our channel, YouTube will suggest content that's tailor-made for you, and you'll help AfterBuzz continue to grow. And if you're worried about pesky notifications, don't be, because they're optional. So hit that subscribe button now for this channel and check out our other AfterBuzz YouTube channels as well. Let us know you did so in the comments and we'll thank you on air. For now, thanks for being the best fans and for helping us be the ESPN of TV talk.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you for being the MVP of live reads, Bianca. We appreciate
Yes.
that. Co-MVP, because Angele did it last week. So now as we move on to episode 7, entitled The Choice, this is the episode with that letter for all the astronauts to sign. And there's a lot of reassuring, like, really take your time. Don't just, sign it right away. Think about it. And they even gave them another night to think about it. Go talk to your loved ones. And before we sort of go through the way the different significant others and family members reacted in the course of the episode, I wanted to ask each of you, so, very hypothetical, but if a loved one, whether it be a significant other, a child, even a parent, sits down and says, so look, I'm going to Mars and I may never come back. If I do come back, it'll be 3 years from now. How do you think, Bianca, that you would process that? Would you be like, hey, you got to be you, go up to space? Or would you be, especially with that 1 in 5 chance that they don't come, well, actually it's a 4 in 5 chance that they don't come back.
Yeah, I think things in life, at least for me, I don't know about you guys, but when it's a hypothetical, it feels, and they say this actually when they're talking about it, it goes from a hypothetical to fact when they realize that the MAV isn't going to work. So I think with people that you love, at least my loved ones, when it feels like maybe it won't happen, it's easy to be supported. It's really easy to say, whatever your dreams are, go wholeheartely
But then when it becomes
future.
a little bit closer, and of course there'd already been the tragedy with the Providence 1, so there was already going to be more apprehension than there were for the original crew members that we saw in episode 1, right?
Yeah, I don't. Look, I don't know what I would do. I'd want to be supportive and make sure that they knew, because it feels for most of the characters that they're going to do it anyway.
Right.
So you want them to go into space thinking that you love and support them, but it would be really hard.
Well, let me also ask you the reverse of that. Now, if you had spent half your life training and then you were going to go do it and you were like, would you be asking in the way that it seemed like Sadie asked and the way that Tom asked, where it's like, I need to hear that you're okay with this, but I'm not really asking you if you're okay with this. So just tell me what I want to hear. Would you ask the question like that, Bianca? I mean, would you legitimately take their feelings into consideration, or be like, dude, it's Mars, come on?
You know what? Thinking about it the way that you just phrased it, it's interesting because Sadie and Tom are really the only, I know the other ones do sort of, but those in their personal relationships have serious issues. So it's interesting that those are the two characters that posed the question like a statement instead of a question, versus the other crew members. They were more open-minded and receptive to their family members' feelings about it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Angele, both questions to you. If someone important in your life gave you this question,
How important?
It could be a spouse, it could be a child.
My babies are not going anywhere.
That's my answer. My 3-year-old son's like, I want to go to Mars. Like, no.
I wouldn't even let him start training. Like, I'm that mom. Like, my kids will play flag football or no football, because I don't even
no tackle.
want. Yeah,
No,
like
no.
I don't want anyone jumping on top of my baby.
No, I'd be like, don't you want to be on the debate team?
Head
That's
injuries.
more fun.
Yeah,
That's more
I was
fun than
like,
football.
Baby, go do soccer. Yeah. I don't want it. I don't want it at all. So, as far as mission to Mars, you can't even start the training.
Right.
And that's just how I feel personally.
Go ahead.
I want to interject, though. I don't have kids. So would you guys feel that way if you knew it was going to isolate your children from you?
Oh, why you say like that?
About
Like
going ourselves?
No, if you're so adamant about how they can't do it, but
that's what they really want to do.
Yeah, that you could then ruin your relationship with them.
We can have a compromise. Like, I can take them to Disney World and we can do the whole
Space
Star
Mountain.
Wars. Like,
Yes,
we
we'll
can
go to
get on every Star Wars ride. Listen, we can go to Universal Studios. We can just completely reenact that whole episode. Like, I can't. I don't know. I don't think my kids would isolate me because of the type of. Will isolate themselves from me because of the type of mom I am.
My kid wouldn't even ask. He's only 3, I realize, but he would be like, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I'm going to Mars. I'll see you when I'm 6." Yeah, just like the first time I ever left him at daycare, I'm like, "Oh, he's gonna be so." He just ran off and played with kids he didn't know, and I'm like, "All right." My compromise, I like what Angele's saying. No, you can't go to Mars, but as long as you stay on Earth. Even Antarctica is okay. because you're on Earth, you know, but no space. That's too, especially not coming back. And that's sort of, you know, the different levels of, you know, there are those of the astronauts who have kids and who are married. And then, you know, there were those who were just dating, you know, so you see a lot of different reactions. I mean, Sadie's husband, that's a very real reaction because it's like, I was okay with it, then you were staying, so I got comfortable with the idea, and now I'm not okay with it. But it doesn't matter. Why should we talk about it tomorrow? Why should we talk about it later? So that's some of the great, like, just sort of very real interactions that we saw throughout the course of this show. And again, very deliberate, very slow paced, but I mean, just very strong character development, like, as Bianca pointed out, you would get from a play. You know, lots of character heavy, you know, people don't usually talk, you know, people don't have conversations that last like a whole page. But in plays and, of course, in TV and movies, they sure do. So we don't really have consensus. But I feel like if
I would go.
You would go for yourself. See, if it was before I had kids, I'd be like, what are you talking about? I have to. But then it's like, oh, yeah, but the kids, how are they going to feel about it? But I don't know. I mean, look, at a really young age, I realized I wasn't going to be an astronaut because it's like, wait a minute. Not only do you have to like be in peak physical condition, you have to be really good at math and science. But what about reading a lot of comic books? Isn't that going to help? No, that doesn't help. Okay, so I'm going to do something else. So I'm not going to be an astronaut, apparently. So I've had
process of elimination.
Yeah, I've had longer than both of your lives realizing that I'm not going to be an astronaut.
You could work for NASA and bake the cake. That's
somebody did have to bake that cake. The cake did look pretty good.
Baked
the cake.
Remember, there's a cake at the end in the last episode, and they're like, "Oh, we shouldn't eat it," and like Sadie stuffs it into her face.
That was such a Sam's Club cake. I was a little disappointed.
I'm glad you said Sam's Club because if you besmirched the name of the Costco cake, we would have had to throw down on this after show. There's no cake better than the
Costco
cake. There was a coupon for it.
I have better handwriting than that, but you know.
But okay, I don't want to jump ahead. Go. What were you going to say?
No, well, just finish your thought. It's all right.
I was just going to say how everybody had to have the masks on when they were baking the cake because they can't get any germs.
Yeah, that was interesting. That just reminds you how serious it is. The way that they take everybody's clothes in those bags because they're going to have to prepare them for space.
And they were wiping down the handles.
Everything. Yeah, it's just it's the sort of things that, of course, it makes sense, but it's not what you think about when you go into space. It's like you can't be bringing any of those Earth germs into space. I guess that's kind of where we're at now. I don't know that we have a lot of people in the chat right now, but if you're watching the archived version of this and you have thoughts about whether or not you want your family to go, leave that in the comments, and we will definitely respond and let you know. I feel like this is one of the shows, obviously our after show, but also the first is going to be one of those shows I think that people are going to find a little bit later because it's hard to keep track of all the shows.
Well, it's hard to keep track because there's The First coming out in movies.
First Man, the movie.
Oh, The First Man, which is also an astronaut.
And when I would tell people here at AfterBuzz some of the shows I was doing, they're like, "Oh, you mean that movie
with Ryan Gosling?"
With Ryan Gosling. Yeah. And I'm like, no. It's got Sean Penn. Sean Penn's in that movie. I'm like, it's not that movie.
No, it's a show.
It's a show.
People. It's a show.
What channel? It's on Hulu. Forget it. But anyway, so I thought that really episodes 5 and 7 I thought were some of the most compelling of the 8 episodes just because of how much character development. And episode 7 is, I think, I just did out a little bit because you get the character development for the other characters. It's not just Tom and his family. I like seeing the other families.
I just
you're so excited.
something.
You had an epiphany. Let's go.
You guys, 5 through 8 had me so curious about the phones, the rotary phones. And we were talking before the show about how in episode 7, this is my conspiracy theory, they show in one of the frames when Tom comes over to the house to sign the thing and talk to Denise, when he approaches the house, in the front of the frame, there's an old rotary phone hanging in Laz's house. So I just...
Well...
keep that in the back
towards
of your
the end
mind.
of this episode, I think you and I have different theories about the phones, but I do think that the phones are not just a metaphor, but also an allegory, and we're seeing it throughout the series because you're working towards completing something. You're working towards finishing it, and also, the actual, building the first phone. you were able to, well, you had to build 2 phones because you had to call the other one. So you're able to make that first phone call. So this is sort of like that connection going beyond the moon, heading towards Mars. So we sort of get that towards the end. Theoretically.
I'm looking at it more of the perspective, who is the man with the phone?
Who is the man?
I have my thoughts.
I have mine.
So
we're not there yet.
whenever they show the guy, they cut to Laz as a little girl. So have you made that correlation?
I saw that. I have, well, stay tuned for 20 more minutes, and then, or really 15, and that's when we'll talk about it. So I just wanted to highlight in this episode the choice. There's this sort of very difficult conversation that Tom and Denise have. They clearly hadn't talked in a while, and she's like, I know you're gonna go, you have to go. And she'd even said in the previous episode, I can't be the one that tells you not to go. And she even says, like, I started writing back to you and I kept saying I don't want you to go. And he's like, oh, well then I won't go. And she's like, no, that's exactly the point. I just need to get it out and say it. You have to go. But no calls, no emails, all that. Yeah. So, I mean, she's just like, I have to move past you now.
She's trying to detach.
Instead of waiting for something terrible happens and then I suddenly have to. It's like, let me just do it now. Angele, what did you think about that? Especially as a mother. Yeah, if you have that conversation, like, I just have to not have contact with you anymore. Yeah,
that is such a hard pill to swallow. I think it's very good and strategic on Denise's behalf because she's already setting her mind up. Like, she's already going through her grieving process right now. So I think is her defense mechanism. Like, she knows that there's a strong possibility that she could be parentless, like completely no mom, no dad. So this is a way for her to get her heart hardened a little bit, warm her up. And because, I mean, what if they had an amazing relationship and then he took off to Mars and died?
Right.
How would that end for her?
Yeah, and you can sort of just see how heartbreaking it is for Tom, but Bianca, it's also difficult for Denise to realize this is what she needs to do, and you kind of see it in that moment when he gives her the hug, and she doesn't hug him back, but she has that look on her face of, like, just how difficult it is. So give us your thoughts on sort of watching all of that unfold.
I think that part of what Denise's problem is the realization that you will never be your parents' first choice. I think that she knows that even if she says, I want you to stay, staying isn't an option for him. Even when he's talking to himself, like we said in the previous episode, he says you're not being completely honest when he says that he would stay. And
right. I mean, on a simpler scale, like a more real world scale, it's like, we have to move for mommy or daddy's new job. Well, yeah, but I don't want to move. Yeah, I get it, but we're going to move.
We're going anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like all my friends are here. But you're going to have new friends, or, maybe you won't, but we still have to move.
And then her mom didn't put her first either. Her mom chose her drug addiction.
Well, her mom she chose herself, and then the medication sort of heightened, I think, all of what her problems were.
And this goes back to even at the very beginning when Tom doesn't want to pick Sadie because she has the no man left behind mentality,
right.
And that is not his.
Right.
Which I think is interesting when you compare it to what he's doing now. It's hard for him, of course, it's his daughter, he loves her. But it's a mission first.
Yeah, no. It's like definitely he just consistently throughout his life just leaves the family behind. And he needs everybody, I guess, on his team to feel that way. I thought that scene where they're outside the guest house with this beautiful pool. How much money does this lady have? I guess a lot if she's sending people to Mars. Yeah, but where just sort of the lighting, the framing, and just reflected in the pool. And like I didn't even write that down. I just remember it as we're talking about it. Just how great that looked. And I mean, I think even though there is a lot of sort of the slow moving character development and stories, just visually they're so, and even when they're not doing any effects, any cool stuff, just the show is really well shot and really well framed. It's very compelling, so much so that when I was taking notes while I was watching it, I felt like wait, I'm missing, like, this actually looks really cool, but I'm trying to like pay attention to what I'm writing. And I don't know, I just thought it was a beautiful scene from a writing standpoint, acting, but just also to look at on the screen.
And the score. The original score, Colin Stetson, I believe, is who did it.
Good job, because I did not look that up.
It's incredible. I sometimes would try and sit there. I don't know if you guys did this, but I would try and sit there, and I would be feeling emotions, and then I would put it on mute and
because you're like, I'm feeling too much.
See if I felt the same emotions. The music is beautiful.
You know what? That sounds like something Tom would do. I'm feeling too much. Let me just go ahead and stop.
Does that make me a psychopath?
No, that makes you ready to go to space.
Okay.
So if you want to go to Mars, Bianca.
Those shots, especially when they are showing outer space and the planets and everything, that is so beautiful. So, yes, I can resonate with that feeling that you had.
Let's just, we sort of brushed over the fact that, Sadie gets back on the crew. We didn't really talk about Mateo, who really has a tough decision to make, but ultimately he's just like, I had to do this. And, that's his girlfriend, right? That's just the girlfriend. And not to belittle the fact that she's his girlfriend, but that's not his wife, so he hasn't known her like forever.
At this point, they've been dating for 2 years, though.
Right. So, yeah, but still, it's, there's an element to him like, who are you to tell me? It's like, you know what, if you need to move on, it's fine. But she's like, yeah, it's a little bit that I want you to stay. But if you found this in anybody else on the crew, you would tell them they couldn't go. You're giving yourself special treatment. And it makes him mad because he knows she's right.
Yep.
And when he sits down to sign the letter, Angele, that's when he realizes, he's like, I just can't do this. I have to tell them.
I'm so glad he was being honest with himself and being honest with his crew, too. That's totally something that he could have hidden and later on been the demise of the whole crew.
Yeah, I mean, if you're on Mars and a member of your crew has like their, eardrum rupture or something, and yes, he's a doctor, can he get inside his own ear?
No.
I think that's a no.
I'm gonna get. Well, you know what? This is a little bit in the future. This is like some, I don't know, 15, almost 20 years. It's hard to really say.
Yeah, but it's not that. I mean,
it's not so far in the future that it's not like the Aliens movies where you can pretty much do everything on that.
But
ship.
we have to keep Mars sanitary, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. So I think that ultimately that does bring us to episode 8, which is the crew of the Providence 2. They're all getting ready for the launch. We see some of the things that we're talking about.
Process.
It's a very long process, but it's also, you just realize like, oh yeah, a lot goes into this. Because they really barely touched on it in the first episode with the first crew. And, you just sort of see, I like them all. We talked about them eating the cake. They're playing basketball. Laz somehow is able to make a basket, even though I feel like she was hustling them a little bit. She should have held them up for some money.
So?
She's like, so this goes into there?
I know. She kills me.
Yeah, so I feel
too
like
smart for that.
Yeah, but I don't know.
She's also very tall, so maybe it's just a natural
that's a great point.
proclivity for basketball.
So, so a lot of this deals with them getting ready for the launch, and when we get the launch itself. Bianca, what did you think about the moment where Denise realizes, like, why am I sitting here watching this on TV? And she runs after Laz's car.
I'm so glad she did that.
I think that you had to anticipate that it was going to happen. It was one of those where we knew the shuttle was going to blow up. I mean,
She's so
know
stubborn.
that.
I didn't think she was.
I thought she
That
might
was
have.
a moment when I was like, okay.
For
It's a little cheesy.
For the economy of storytelling and screen time, it makes sense that it happened that way. I thought it might have happened as it got a little closer, and then I don't know.
They just
called whatever future Uber they have, some like little hover car that comes to your house or whatever. I figured she would go.
She would call George Jetson and he'd come.
Right,
on his
exactly.
crab.
But
a fancy Range Rover.
Ultimately, it gets to be too much for her, Angele, and she just has to go to the I mean, she sees the initial launch, but she's like, I gotta go sit in the stairwell. It was too much.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that when you saw that she kind of needed to remove herself from the situation, and I thought it was a really touching scene that Laz is
she's human.
there.
She's vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's the last parent left.
Yeah.
She has no one after him. They didn't even like allude to a grandmother or anything. Did you guys see any other family she had?
No, I don't think they're even referenced, so we should just assume that she doesn't have anybody.
That's it for her. So, I mean, that was such an appropriate scene, and it's being very realistic to the storyline. Like, she has nothing left, and that was a breakdown moment of, oh my gosh. And then how they were handling one another, towards the end. It was so rough. So I was glad that she showed her vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do like sort of, there's a moment a little bit later, once everything seems to be in the clear, she's back at the house, she's packing up, and then instead she decides to film this video for Tom, which I think is... Well, it's funny in a way, that it's the I hate you because I love you, and then she erases the hate you and writes I miss you. So Bianca, when you see that that's what she's writing to him, think about being in space and you get this video from your kid and it says I hate you. But then the whole thing sort of, you can see how he reacts differently as he watches it unfold.
I think it's exactly what he needed, because the hatred gives him permission to be doing what he's doing.
Right.
But then the love makes him feel okay about it all. I thought it was really beautiful. And also, I don't know if anybody put the metaphor together, but
gosh, what you got, girl?
She wrote it on the chalk wall that he installed because of the original fight between the parents about drawing on the walls.
I did think that.
So I was like, that's really beautiful.
Angele, what did you think about sort of, the fact that I hate the fact that I love you so much, and that I can't stay mad even though I'm mad. The fact, let me put it a little different way. Basically, my interpretation is I love you so much, and that supersedes the fact that I'm really mad at you kind of all the time, but I do really love you. Talk a little bit about that.
Because hate is love, and love, I mean, you have to really love someone to hate them. How much passion goes into hating someone?
So true.
So much passion. So, I mean, they're all synonymous to me. And like that whole clip, it was great that you said it was funny, because I was laughing because it took my emotions through a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I was mad at her for saying I hate you, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, she's erasing the hate. She put I love you. So I got happy, and then I got sad because she's like, I miss you. So I went through all of these emotional bouts like within 5 seconds.
Well, that essentially is the end of the 8th episode, and I want to take a couple minutes and ask each of you, and we'll all talk about what we think would happen in another season, which I'm just assuming there'll be another season, but I don't know that there's an official announcement. But, Bianca, well, actually, I know I heard the sound effect.
Your AfterBuzz.
Well... Sorry, Jeff, but what I was about to say is before we get to that, I know what's been burning, and you want to talk about the phone repair shop. And I'll tell you my theory, and then you can say yours. I think that's Tom as a little kid, just sort of working and repairing all the phones. You said something very interesting. I think it was Angele who said that you thought it maybe was Laz as a kid.
No, I didn't think it was her as a kid. I think that there's some connection to that guy, because that's definitely a man.
Well, the narration is definitely a man, and I'm not quite sure about that. But when the door opens, you see it doesn't look to me like an adult. But Bianca, you had a very different theory. You're seeing all the phones, they're starting to shake, and then the door opens. What did you think?
Yeah, so they're obviously by the launch site with the shaking.
Mm-hmm.
I like your idea about
by
it being...
a launch site. We don't know when that is.
Yeah.
That might not be this
site.
launch. That could be like he grew up watching space, or whomever the person is, grew up around that. And they saw it. And
I have a theory.
Okay.
So my theory is that could be Laz's father, which got her so passionately driven towards this mission, because maybe she grew up watching or being near that type of activity, astronauts, rockets, space, all of that stuff. So I think it has something to do with Laz's upbringing, maybe her father, and why she's so determined to lose however many team members she has to complete the mission.
Bianca, did you actually say who you thought it was? Or
I didn't. I definitely think it's somebody related to Laz, though.
Okay.
I 100% think it's someone related to Laz, just because it's so insightful about all of the moments that she had as a little kid.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be her dad. It could also, maybe, I'm throwing a little mystery in there. What if it's her son in the future?
Oh, that's interesting.
Because I think there's something to be said for, with advancements in technology, sometimes people go back to like how people like vintage cars, even though we have
the idea of repairing old phones, it's sort of, it's a lot different than repairing a cell phone. It's super complicated and you really can't do it.
Right,
actually.
there's an art to it. It's almost the craft of doing it.
Well, that's something we can
probably
find out
came with instructions
in a potential season 2. And now, Jeff, sorry that we jumped the gun a little bit, but now I'd like to
AfterBuzz TV predictions.
Angele, I will go with you first. What, and keeping in mind we only have 3 minutes, what would you like to see in a season 2 of this show? What would you expect to see in a second season of the show?
I would expect to see a lot of camaraderie in the spaceship and having just really wonderful, nurturing moments among them. And also Denise healing on the outside, on planet Earth. She's healing herself. Yeah.
What do you think, Bianca? What would you like to see in a second season?
I would really like to see, and I would guess that we probably are going to see how being isolated in a ship for years affects a person, even somebody that's really prepared for it, to a negative capacity. That's what I would guess we start to see fissures in the characters.
You're anticipating that?
Yeah. No, and also I'm going to be completely honest and say that I really hope there's some sort of alien communication.
Oh, I think that would be fascinating.
Oh my
I wonder
gosh.
if it's that kind of story.
I don't think it is, but I hope.
I would like to see some of this Mars mission. I'd like to see them trying to get the equipment repaired so that they can come back. What I actually think they're going to do is the second season's going to just be about them coming back to Earth and reconnecting and talking about it. We'll get flashbacks.
You think so?
I just was trying to think about what it would cost to do a whole
I think that would be season 3.
Well, maybe.
I actually read an interview that
Please
Bill
tell me.
Bowman
I'm good. So this now falls under the news category.
Yes.
Yeah, and then we'll wrap it up. Look at that. Just like that with the Sounders.
He, just to summarize, he pretty much says that yes, he does have a season 2 planned out in his mind. He doesn't know if it's going to happen, but if so, it's going to be a transition between their journey to Mars and the people that they left on Earth. He says that he doesn't think they get to Mars until the very end of season 2.
That makes more sense. Yeah, so that would be season 3. Well, see, that's some good insight. So I didn't expect season 2 to be set on Mars because I'm still thinking it's too expensive. But anyway,
New Mexico.
That's true. New Mexico is just like Mars. Anybody who watched Breaking Bad, they know. New Mexico is basically Mars. Anyway, well, thanks so much to everybody who joined us. Special thanks to Bianca and Angele for being part of this panel. This was a lot of fun. If you would like to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at ChristianDMZ. And Bianca, where do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Bianca Haase, 2 A's, 1 S, and an E.
And Angele, where do people find you?
You can find me at Angele Taylor _ on both Instagram and Twitter.
All right, well, thank you so much, and thanks to Jeff Graham in the booth. We will, if there is a season 2, we'll see you then, but either way, we'll see you around. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.